Hey, this is Mike from the Run Testers, and this is our first run multi-tester review of the Suunto Race. So before getting some multi-tester thoughts on the Suunto Race, what exactly is the Suunto Race? Well, this is Suunto's first multi-sports watch with an AMOLED display. And features and functionality wise, it's definitely building on what we saw on the Suunto Vertical, which we've already reviewed on the channel and really liked as well too. Now, while the Vertical was very much an outdoor centric watch, the Suunto Race is considered a more performance-based watch. So this is aimed at people that are probably looking at things like the Garmin Forerunner range and also the Vantage V series as well too from Polar. So in terms of price, things are pretty interesting on the Suunto Race. Now it comes in two versions, a bit like the Suunto Vertical. So you have a cheaper stainless steel version and then the pricier titanium model of the Race. Now the starting price of the Suunto Race puts it much less than watches that it's competing against, which are a lot more expensive. So things like the Garmin Forerunner 965, the Garmin Epix, the Epix Pro, the Polar Vantage V3, and also things like the Apple Watch Ultra. So in terms of a feature-packed, top-end, multi-sports watch, the Suunto Race definitely comes in less than the competition. So a few other things to highlight in the design, aside from that kind of titanium or stainless steel bezel option, you are getting a removable silicone strap, and Suunto is offering some new kind of brighter, more colourful straps to attach to this watch. You are getting a polymer case, you're getting 3 physical buttons, including this kind of twisting watch crown style one. You are getting a design overall that is waterproof up to 100 meters. And you are of course getting an AMOLED display, and it is a 1.43 inch 466 by 466 resolution AMOLED display. It is one that is a touchscreen display, and you have the option to have it as always on, which will obviously impact on the battery life, and you also have a raise to wake gesture support there. So those are the key things going to be highlight on the design side of things on the Suunto Race. Okay, so into those key features, and unsurprising, there is a lot here available on the Suunto Race. We'll really kind of pick out the headline ones, and we'll kind of list what else to look out for on this watch. The first one, or the first big one being, is it's got the kind of dual band GPS mode that we saw on the Suunto Vertical. We're now getting that here on the Race, which is, designed to kind of improve that outdoor tracking accuracy when you are running near tall buildings, where you're kind of deeply forested areas, which kind of impact on the signal. You are also getting free offline mapping as well here too, something again we saw on the Suunto Vertical, and obviously have the benefit of having an AMOLED display and really elevate the amount of detail that you can see here on the Suunto Race. Now in terms of other features, there's plenty in terms of the training and analysis side of things. One that Suunto is really kind of talking about here is the kind of HRV based recovery insights. Now this is something we're seeing from Garmin and Polar as well too, and Suunto's approach is very similar in terms of kind of taking heart rate variability measurements, particularly during sleep, to kind of offer those kind of insights in terms of your recovery time. So in terms of that kind of third-party app support, you've got that here too, just like you had on the Suunto Vertical and most Suunto watches as well too. You're getting some kind of race-focused features here as well too. You get access to the Suunto Plus store as well to kind of add extra functionality to this watch here. There's smartwatch features here. They're not as kind of feature rich as what you see on something like a Garmin, but you are getting the ability to view notifications. You are getting the ability to control your music playback from your phone as well too, and it works with Android and iOS as well too. So those are some of the key kind of headline features on the Suunto Race. Everything, again, as I said, we got the Suunto Vertical, which really been brought here on the Race, but kind of elevated it or improved it or enhanced it, having that AMOLED display with the Race as well too. And we do have to talk about battery life, because that's a pretty big deal here. The fact that you've got an AMOLED display, and that will typically drain the battery life a little bit quicker than kind of older display technology. So in terms of what Suunto is touting on the Race, it's saying you can get up to 12 days if you are just using it in kind of daily kind of usage, smartwatch mode, no training. And you can get up to 26 days if you turn off the continuous heart rate monitoring, and again, you're not training or logging any training. So really kind of that daily, kind of looking at notifications, looking at the time, that's the kind of level of battery life that you can expect to get. In terms of GPS battery life, and that kind of top end GPS accuracy mode, you're getting 40 hours battery life, and that can go as high as 120 hours, but obviously you are restricting the accuracy of the GPS tracking and also turning off things like heart rate monitoring. So it's kind of in line with similar watches, but ultimately what it's saying is that with the Suunto Race, this isn't a watch with an AMOLED display that's going to get you a few days. This is going to get you well over a week and maybe potentially weeks, but ultimately that's not really, those numbers are not really factoring when you're kind of training on a regular basis. So how does it perform? Let's find out so far and our initial thoughts on the Suunto Race.
So I've been testing the Suunto Race since Thursday, and I've done 3 runs of it in that time. I've really enjoyed using it so far. The design is very nice. It is a big watch, but it doesn't feel very bulky or heavy on the wrist. I found it pretty comfortable to wear the whole time. I like the 3-button layout with a digital dial. That's worked quite well for me, and the screen is obviously really nice and bright. It's an upgrade on what we've seen from Suunto in the past, and it's just a nice AMOLED screen. I don't think Suunto does a huge amount with its user interface to really take advantage of that screen yet. I certainly think there could be some nicer watch faces available, but overall, it's a lovely screen to look at during workouts and outside workouts. And I've had no real problems with lag either, I'd say, especially when using the digital dial. It scans through the widgets very quickly. Kind of see that there. And even when using the touchscreen, it hasn't been very laggy for me. It's not instant response every single time, but it's not been any kind of annoyance for me, the lag on the watch. There's not really been any lag, basically, is what I'm saying. So I've done 3 runs, like I said, and in that time I've also been using the Polar Vantage V3 and the Garmin Epix Pro. So the Garmin Epix Pro is basically the control watch with very good multi-band GPS, and that's linked to a Polar H10 chest strap to check the accuracy of the heart rate tracking on the new watches I am testing here. So I did like an easy to steady general training run around near me to look at GPS and heart rate, a hard progression 10K based on heart rate, and then I did a longer run in the woods yesterday to look at GPS under tree cover and check out the maps on the Suunto Race. So start with GPS, which has been absolutely excellent. We saw Suunto's multi-band GPS on the vertical earlier this year, and it was really, really good, right up there with Garmin, which I think is the best on the market. So I'd say the Suunto and the Garmin are the best multi-band GPS watches available. That is the same with the Suunto Race, but no problems with GPS. Very similar to the Garmin in terms of the tracks it produces. It doesn't really run wide at corners. It's a very consistent track, not really throwing up any errors under tree cover. Splits have been coming in at the same time as the other multi-band watches I've been wearing, and overall, yeah, GPS top notch so far. Don't expect to have any problems with it in the future. So that's great. I love having a really accurate GPS on my wrist, and I'd say that the Race is right up there. Heart rate accuracy has been more of a mixed bag. So it was very good on the hardest run I've done in it. That progression 10K, I did 2 heart rate, and I was really pushing up towards my maximum heart rates. And I was obviously using the Epix Pro to judge the session because I had it linked to a chest strap, but I could have used the Suunto for it because the heart rate was that accurate. It was rising steadily in line with the chest strap for the most part, and it was really impressive. Actually, on the easier runs I've done in it, it's been much worse. So easy jog around the forest yesterday, the heart rate reading was just too high the whole time, and on my easy to steady run, I had a massive section where my heart rate was way too high, and the run got classed as like a VO2 max effort. So I still would be linking a chest strap to this watch, but it did work very well for the one run. I really needed it to be good, but overall, yeah, I think the accuracy's not quite there. I probably will link a chest strap for a lot of my testing, just so I can test the training analysis features on the watch a little bit better. So, and then on the run in the woods yesterday, I had a route loaded and used the maps on the watch, and they're really good. Like, it's easy to create a route in the Suunto app and then send it to the watch very quickly, get a nice clear line showing the way you're going to go. One thing I really like that Suunto does is it shows the next turn you're making with a different color arrow on the map, so it's very obvious on your route. So for example, at the start of my route yesterday, there was a bit which was I was going to do in both directions because it was near my house, and you could see which way I was meant to go the first time because the blue arrow was pointing to turn to the left. Just makes it really easy to follow the routes. Screen is nice and bright with the AMOLED obviously, and had no problems reading it under sunlight or tree cover. So yeah, maps are a nice big addition to this watch. Takes a bit of time to get the maps onto the watch. You have to download it wirelessly through the app, and that takes a long time. So if you're in a new place, you'd really have to plan ahead and make sure you had the maps you wanted on there. But overall, a lovely addition, same as we saw with the vertical, but it's even better on the AMOLED screen, I'd say. Then the battery life has been really impressive on the Suunto Race. I think this is one area that's going to really stand out actually on the market as an AMOLED watch. I've had the always on screen enabled the whole time. I've had it at max brightness for the last couple of days. It was still pretty bright the previous days before that, and after 2 runs it dropped down to about 75%. That was after 3 days. Then after my long run on Sunday, that's 4 days of use, I was at 65%. So I do think you are going to look at a week kind of minimum, and that's really fantastic for an always-on screen with an AMOLED display. I think some of the stuff it does is less power intensive than other watches. I think in particular the heart rate sensor in the watch looks a little bit less power intensive, less LEDs than you get with Garmin and Polar, and that does impact accuracy, I find, a little bit outside of runs as well, where I do think it reads my heart rate high throughout the day and stuff like that. The sleep tracking has been quite iffy as well, but overall battery life certainly a strong point for the Suunto. I think on the actual sports tracking front, it's just really very, very good as anything out there so far in my testing. And then outside of it, maybe doesn't do quite as much as things like Garmin's watches in terms of smart features and general training analysis, and then Polar's body analysis it does. But in terms of the tracking, GPS has been fantastic. Heart rate, I'd probably still use a strap. Maps are great. General, yeah, really enjoyed using it so far. Looking forward to carrying on my testing.
Okay, so into that run test, and I've done a couple of runs with the Suunto Race now, and I'll start by talking a little bit about the design, what it's like to wear, and I would say ultimately has been pretty good. You do notice that this watch is on. This is the titanium version that I've had to use. It definitely is a design that's in keeping with the Suunto Vertical, so definitely feels that kind of more outdoor style kind of design in terms of that kind of big bezel, the kind of big buttons as well too. And it's almost venturing to kind of, I think, Garmin Fenix Epic's kind of realms in terms of that design and the size of the watch. So you definitely feel that it is on, but overall the screen has been very good. It's a very good quality AMOLED display, so I'm glad to see. I've been using it with the Garmin Forerunner 965 and the Polar Vantage V3, and to me it feels like a good AMOLED that's bright, colourful. You know, it gives you that kind of vibrancy. The viewing visibility has been good in low light, and it has been fine outdoor in bright light as well too. So from that point of view, it's felt pretty good to wear overall. It just isn't as light maybe as something like the Garmin Forerunner 965 or the Polar Vantage V3, which, as I said, I've been wearing alongside this watch as well too. Now into that kind of general run tracking performance. Now we saw a really impressive example of the dual band GPS modes that we're seeing on all watches on the Suunto Vertical, so I was hoping for more of the same on the Suunto Race, and I'm happy to say it does feel very good so far. In the 2 runs that I've done, I've run with the Polar Vantage V3, the Garmin Forerunner 965, both in their kind of top dual band modes. This has been closest to the Garmin Forerunner 965, which I've kind of regard as, you know, offering the best, or Garmin's kind of dual band mode being the best in terms of that dual band performance, and it's held up well against that, and that's kind of what I'm seeing in the data and also in those GPS track routes as well too. In terms of that kind of heart rate data, not so good, definitely more in line with what I saw in the Polar Vantage V3. I don't think the sensor is the best in class, and even kind of those steady pace runs against a chest strap, the numbers didn't really add up. The graph didn't quite match up either. So from a heart rate monitoring performance, I'm not seeing a great performance so far in my 2 runs. But ultimately, in terms of that core kind of GPS performance, picking up a signal, the data that kind of relates to it as well, the experience of looking at it on the watch and absorbing that information on the watch, it has been very good so far. I've been very impressed with the Suunto Race so far from that point of view. So yeah, definitely positives outweighing the negatives so far, and kind of my run tracking experience with the Suunto Race. So a few thoughts on some of the other features I think worth talking about on the Suunto Race. First being mapping. Now we got that kind of full mapping support on the Suunto Vertical. That is now being brought over to the Suunto Race as well, and obviously you've got the bonus of having the AMOLED display, which kind of elevates the kind of amount of detail you can see on those maps. Now getting those maps onto the watch does take a little bit of time. Start the process off in the app, you've got to kind of pick a section of a map, and then it will kind of proceed to download that. I think it took an hour for it to kind of download a section for me, so that does take a little bit of time. But in terms of that experience of using the maps, it looks pretty good, looks in line and feels consistent with the kind of experience you'll get on a kind of Garmin, and also what you're going to get on a kind of similarly priced Polar as well too. So feels pretty good having that mapping support there, and having that AMOLED display as well does kind of improve the experience overall compared to the Suunto Vertical. Talk a little bit about the kind of smartwatch experience. Now you're not getting the kind of level of smartwatch features that you're going to get in a Garmin, but you are getting things like kind of the music playback control, notification support, and I do feel like the AMOLED display does make those features feel a little bit nicer to use overall. But I would say that, and I think maybe I'm on my own in terms of this so far, is that I am experiencing some lag in terms of the, you know, interacting with the screen. It's something I saw when I first kind of saw the Suunto kind of a couple of months ago, and I'm seeing it with the Race in my sample as well. Hopefully it's just a one-off, but I am seeing some lag, which does kind of affect the kind of experience I've had day to day of using and kind of interacting with the watch. So a few thoughts on battery life, which is pretty important here when you factor in that this has an AMOLED display, and compared to older display technologies, it is going to demand more of the battery. Now in terms of what I've seen so far in my few days with the Race, it's been pretty good overall. I look at the kind of experience of doing that longer run with the watch in its kind of top end kind of GPS, dual band GPS mode. The battery life drop off was, for, you know, an hour and a half worth of running, it was less than 5%, which was similar to what I saw from the Vantage V3, the Polar Vantage V3, the Forerunner 965 that I had as well too. I compared it to the Suunto Vertical though, which doesn't have an AMOLED display, and the battery life is definitely, drop off in that top GPS mode is definitely smaller in comparison. But I think in the grand scheme of things against other AMOLED watches, it seems pretty consistent overall. Day to day, there hasn't been a massive or severe kind of drop off in terms of the battery life I've seen. Overnight it's been a couple of percent. I think maybe you're not getting as power intensive features running throughout the day on the Suunto compared to things like the Garmin and the Polar ultimately. So I think, in terms of getting you a week's worth of training, it feels like it's going to hold up, and using kind of smartwatch features and stuff as well too. So yeah, no worrying signs in terms of battery drop off in GPS, battery life kind of side of things, and also day to day. So yeah, pretty satisfied so far, looking pretty good. No major issues with the Suunto Race.
So it's been a while since I had a Suunto running watch on my wrist, and I've had the Suunto Race Titanium Edition on for less than a week. Now, first up, I'm a fan of this titanium chassis. I think it looks really smart, and people have actually commented on that. Overall, I think this is quite a slick, well-designed watch. And like the Polar Vantage V3 and the Garmin Forerunner 965, which sit close to this one on price and spec, I think the big hero here is that AMOLED screen. It's somewhat spoiled in this one by the bezel, but there's still ample screen real estate, and when it's whacked up to full brightness, it's notably brighter actually than the Polar Vantage V3, which I've been testing side by side. However, so far I've found the rays to wake a little bit sluggish, and also the touchscreen is not as snappy as the Polar and the Forerunner 965. Now, as with the Polar, that display here is a big step forward for Suunto when it comes to display quality, and this is easily the most exciting Suunto I've seen for ages, and I've been enjoying my test so far. Now, there have been a couple of downsides. I had a real struggle to get the strap connected to the watch in the first place. It's got standard swappable straps, but I had to take a knife to mine to budge the spring pins, those quick release pins. There are much better ways to kind of put the straps together, I think. I'm not a fan of the thick silicone strap either, or this kind of hook fastening mechanism that you've got here. Even the cheaper Coros Pace 3 has clocked the benefits of nylon straps for fit and comfort, and I would much prefer to have that on my wrist. Now, on GPS, in my initial tests, I've had the Suunto Race in full accuracy mode to check out the dual frequency accuracy up against the Polar Vantage V3 and the Garmin Forerunner 965. And so far it's been solid, not just on the total distances, but also when you dig into the track details. It's been a good match for both of those other watches. Not too many stray traces going through buildings or into the rivers. Pretty much bang on in terms of the overall distance calculations as well. My hourly heart rate tests have included a slow and steady 10 kilometre and a set of short and fast intervals. I've put it up against the Polar H10 chest strap, the Vantage V3 optical sensor, and the £400 Frontier X2 chest strap. And what I found so far on the slow and steady run, the Suunto Race had a tendency to lag a bit and then lurch much higher than the chest strap. So there was a bit of delay, then it often shot beyond. However, on the intervals, it still felt like there was a real-time delay beyond the Polar V3 optical, but it registered much lower spikes for the intervals, and definitely more testing needed here on the heart rate, I think. Now, when it comes to battery, the Suunto Race burned just 2% on average overnight. That's with all the tracking switched on, including blood oxygen, which usually torches battery much faster, so that seems pretty strong so far in my tests. A 1 hour run test in the highest accuracy GPS mode burned just 3%. That was almost bang on match for the Garmin Forerunner 965 and the Polar Vantage V3 in their highest tracking modes as well, though it's potentially a little off the 40 hours that Suunto claims it can last. Now, despite that big AMOLED screen, the daily usage burn was around 4 to 5% without training. That's with the always screen switched off as well. Now, my initial verdict, it's really early days in my testing, so I'm not really going to give you a verdict as such. What I will say is the Suunto has made some really big leaps forward here, I think. Though much more testing is needed, there's a lot to like here in this watch. That big AMOLED screen gets a big thumbs up from me, though it'd be better if it didn't have the bezel. Garmin's a bit nicer for that. But having that big AMOLED is a point of difference now over lots of the Coros watches, which Suunto I think really needed. The GPS accuracy so far has been on point. The heart rate hasn't convinced me 100%, but I need more testing before I give my verdict on that. The battery life is at least a match for the Garmin Forerunner 965 and the Polar Vantage 3 in training mode as well. Now, I've not had a chance to test them yet, but the navigation skills on paper here look really comprehensive and likely has the edge over the Polar Vantage V3, but maybe not the Garmin Forerunner 965. Now, as I've said, I wish I had a nylon strap like the Coros Pace 3 to boost the comfort, and I'm not sure I'll ever be a true fan of the Suunto navigation. I always find it a bit of a struggle, but overall, I've been impressed so far, and I'm looking forward to getting into the fitness training and performance insights a bit deeper, testing things like the sleep tracking, fitness tests, all of those things, and getting into the maps and navigation. If all of that stacks up nicely, then I do think that Suunto might have a strong, well-priced contender here, because it is pretty keenly priced when you consider it up against those other watches.
So initial verdict is that this is a very, very good sports watch, and the price is fantastic. Suunto really means business with this pricing. That's maybe one of the most exciting features about this, is that Suunto has come in and really gone, people have been buying Garmin watches for a while. Garmin watches are still a little bit more feature rich than Suunto's watches in terms of the smart features you get, the more developed mapping you get. In general, a lot of the features that have been added to Suunto lately have been on Garmin's for a couple of years, so they are a bit more well-rounded. They're a bit more, foolproof and work very well, and there's a little bit more stuff on those watches as well. But so Suunto has come in and offered the key features and come in with a lower price point. It's really fantastically priced, especially for the titanium watch. With the materials you're getting on that, there's nothing around that price point unless you're looking at substantial sales on other brands' devices. So yeah, after a few slightly iffy years from Suunto, the vertical was good, and then something like this comes out and they totally redeem themselves. It's a really good watch, really enjoying testing it. I think it's going to be one to really look out for because of that price and the combination of the accuracy, the battery life, the nice new screen. There's an awful lot going for it. I haven't really seen any lag either, which was one potential pitfall for it. It's been running pretty smoothly for me. So yeah, really enjoying testing it. We'll have loads more to say about it and all those features I've mentioned in our full review. But for now, Suunto Race looks like a bit of a winner to me.
So some initial thoughts on the Suunto Race, and I have to say my few days with this watch, I definitely feel like Suunto has got a good watch on its hands here. I think we saw with the Suunto Vertical that Suunto seems to be back on track in terms of making really good quality kind of top end sports watches, running watches, and I think the Race feels like more of the same. Adding that AMOLED display hasn't hampered things like the performance. I think the battery life feels like it's going to be pretty good still overall for a AMOLED running watch and sports watch. The only minor thing is the little bit of lag that I'm experiencing with maybe when there was some software updates, maybe that will kind of finesse. But ultimately, in terms of that core running experience you're getting in the Suunto Race, it feels very good. Kind of feels in line with the other watches that I think sit around this price. And price is a really big thing here. This comes in cheaper than the 965, 4965. And the Polar Vantage V3, so those are really the watches they are up against. And also you could probably look at how it compares to things like the Epics and Phoenix as well. And I think when you look at it from that point of view, this is very good value for money, and it's looking like very good value for money so far. So yeah, all very positive on the Suunto Race, minus that kind of like laggy feeling it's given me on the software front. But overall feels pretty good, pretty solid. And again, as I said, the price, the starting price of the Suunto Race makes this a very attractive option to pick for runners. Okay, so there you have it, some initial thoughts on the Suunto Race from 3 of the run testers. Now, obviously, plenty more testing to do before we get to our multi-tester review. As always, like and subscribe, hit that little bell to find out about our latest videos, and yeah, we'll see you for the next run testers video.